So for this tip and trick, we're going to I'm going to show you how I can use 3DG and vegetation and Blender to hide seams between meshes. Now, this might go away with V4. It might not, or you can still continue to use it in V4, I'm sure. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So in here in Unity, I want you to take a look at this area with this trees out here. Now, from a distance, this looks pretty seamless, right? And that's because this area here has a different mesh material assigned to it that's like leaves. So does this over here. So you can see it looks like woodsy. It has a mesh on it. And if you look over here, same thing. This actually has a different material on it too, but you can't tell. The reason being is that I disguise those seams a little bit in a couple different ways. 3 different ways actually. One is the 3DG itself. So this 3DG material that you see on here is the same between these 2 meshes, and up close the 3DG actually, you can't see through it. It's dense enough that you can't see through it, so you can't see the mesh boundary. There is, and as I back up, I want you to keep an eye right here. There's a mesh boundary right here, and you can see it a little, but it's not that hard boundary that you're used to, okay? But as I back up and the LOD starts to disappear and that 3D grass disappears, you can see that you can now see that hard boundary. Okay, now I'm not too worried about it here because the golfer will look out this way and never look behind them, so no big deal. But up here, I did disguise it, so I did it with 3DG. So you can see as I zoom in, the 3DG comes back again, and now you don't see that seam as well. And I put some vegetation on it. So even though there's a really hard seam right there, it's disguised pretty well. Same thing over here. There's a really hard seam as well. It's that material, but as I go in, the 3DG comes out and it disappears. And you're like, well, you can't see that ground material. That's okay. I'm not too worried about that. What I really want is just from a distance for people to be able to tell that that is a really wooded area. And I've done that with, there's not that much vegetation here, if you can believe it. The vegetation, it's all hand planted. There's not much of it, but from a distance, it looks like there is because the underlying mesh, which is like this leaf texture, you can see it, now you can see it through the grass. It's like a leaf texture. It blends really well with the vegetation. I mean, you can see right here, there's a little vegetation here, it's kind of spotty, but it disguises it here. Now on the seam itself, there's quite a bit, which hides the seam, which is right here. So I did it more dense there, but you can see it does a good job of hiding that seam. And from a distance, it looks pretty dense. And then here's another one. So this area right here doesn't have much vegetation planted on it. From a distance, you can see there's definitely an edge, but this is supposed to look like leaves on the ground, like an area that they haven't really been keeping after. And as I zoom in and I try to get closer and look at that edge, it disappears because the grass takes over the 3DG. Now, how I did this to make it look even more blended is I actually cut this shape in Blender as opposed to Inkscape, because when you do Inkscape, this would be a straight line. But if you do it in Blender, you get this jagged line. Let me zoom out. Now you can see that jagged line now. See how that's not straight? So that actually helps it blend in a little bit more as well. So let me go the other side because you'll be able to see it more over here. Now I didn't cut it in the right spot over here. And I also, so this is good. This is a seam that was cut in Inkscape. So this was an Inkscape shape side. I could go in and I could change this. So if I cut this and join this together on this side in Blender, I could get that jagged look that I have on this side. But the reason I'm not worried about it over here is because the golfer doesn't see this. What they're going to really see standing on this tee box is this seam. And most likely, if they hit one right here, yeah, they'll see that seam. But actually, they won't because, oops. Oh, I really screwed up now. I got disoriented. Where am I at? Oh boy, I got really bounced far away. This seam, the golfer, if they do land in here, the seam, they don't see it. I mean, they could be standing, basically, I'm standing on top of it right now. I can't even see that seam. I think it's over here. So that's using 3DG. So you can use 3DG to hide a seam. You can use vegetation to hide a seam, and you can use Blender, using Blender. Oh, so how did I cut this in Blender? The same technique, I did a video on dividing your whole 99 meshes into smaller shapes for performance. Just use the same technique here to cut that. That's it.